Okay, hello and welcome. Chris here, T Titan. And in this video, what I want to do is to walk you through the process of creating your design images. So at this point, you've selected 3 to 5 design ideas. We've been through all the sites. We've built up a list of between 5 and 20. We've slept on it. Come back a day later. Look through the list that we've presented. Look through the comments we've made. Reflected on what we think the best designs are going to be. You've probably re-reviewed the guidelines on what makes a good design that was in the introduction video for step 2. So, we've really got 3 to 5 design ideas selected, and we know which designs that we want to create. Again, they need to be simple, mostly text, no trademark issues there, and what we actually want to do at this stage is to actually create the design image. So we're going to go from having a reference design, an example design that's already on the site, and we're going to look to take that design, use it as a template, while also respecting intellectual property and copyright, and actually create a fresh design that we can go and sell. A few technical things here. So it needs to be in 1000 by 1000 pixel size and in a file format called PNG, which is like a transparent image format. Don't worry too much about this. If you just say to your designer it needs to be 1000 by 1000 pixels, PNG file, you can literally just copy and paste that and just give it to him or her, and they'll know what that is. So you don't really need to worry too much about it. As I've mentioned, we want 1 to 4 colours, 4 colours max. The issue with using more colours is that it becomes expensive. So if you have like 6 colours, 8 colours, 10 colours, it's going to cost you a lot of money basically. So we want 1 to 4 colours max. Probably in a lot of cases it might even just be one colour, which is white. And in most cases, again, we're just going to sell on black t-shirts. So white text, maybe some white icons on black is going to be the way that we'll go. Then we'll get our image back. Either we'll create it ourselves, we'll get it back from the designer, and then we can just upload our design to Teespring and we are good to go. So there are several ways that you can actually physically create these design images. The first, of course, is with auto design. Very easy to launch tests, which I always like. I like being able to do lots of very quick tests, very quick and cheap tests. And of course, the great thing with auto design is that it's free. And the more designs you do, the more things you test, the more this will become an issue. So initially it might be tempting to spend $50 on a design. That might sound like a good investment. But if that design doesn't work out and you spend another $50 on a so-called professional design and that doesn't convert for you, good design, but it just might not convert. That's just what happens. And then you spend another, and before you know it, you can have 10 designs, none of which have worked particularly well. You've spent $50 in each design, that's $500 in total, and then you've maybe spent another $10 or $20 testing on Facebook, so you're looking at maybe $800 outlay for the first 10 designs, and that might even only get you through two or three different niches, which really isn't enough to find the ones that are going to work for you. Obviously, that's not a good situation to be in. Even if you've got a pot of money to burn, even if you're going into this with thousands of dollars, that you're willing to spend, which I'm assuming most people aren't, that's not a good situation, either financially, I think, or psychologically, either, in terms of how you're approaching this. So the fact that auto design is free, it should mean that it's one of the core tools that you use. If the design is free, for example, let's say, and instead of having to pay $50 for a design, which I certainly wouldn't recommend anyway, but if the design is free and you can test, say, 10 designs, let's say that you spent $10 testing each design, which is a pretty good amount. I'd be happy with that. $10 times 10 designs means you can test 10 different designs, maybe 3 niches for $100, which is a much more reasonable number. If you're stretched, if you're really on a limited budget, then you could even only test $5, which wouldn't give you a lot of data, but it would at least be a reasonable test. In which case you could test 10 designs, maybe 3 or 4 niches for $50, which is far better than testing 10 designs for $800. It's much more sustainable and it's a much better approach. So auto design is something that should certainly be one of the tools you use the most. Fiverr is a great place to get designs done. It's very cheap, it's very quick. Very often you can get a design done for $5 and in under 24 hours, or at most 2 or 3 days. That being said, the designs on Fiverr aren't the best. These guys are basically experts at churning out designs very, very quickly. They will do designs better than you simply because they are professional designers. And so for that reason, you can get good designs, or at least reasonable designs done. You just probably won't get great designs done. Um, Obviously, $5 for a design, is relatively cheap. You can get like 20 designs done and maybe test six niches for like $100. So five is still a good option. Freelance sites, some people do hire designers on freelance sites. For example, Elance and Odesk are two of the bigger sites. Generally, it's a little more expensive there. You can get $10 to $50 perhaps per niche. The quality of designs generally will be better. Some people will try and hire a full-time designer as soon as they start with Teespring, or a part-time designer, and they'll agree to pay them, $100 per week, or maybe for like, let's say 30 designs or 20 designs or something, or like $100 a week for 10 designs, or $250 per month for like 15 designs or 25 designs or 30 designs. I don't suggest that you do this. I don't recommend hiring anyone until the model is proven, until you're able to start to see sales. And at that point, it might be more efficient for you to hire a designer, as opposed to just constantly having to refer back to Auto Design and Fiverr. But straight out the gate, I don't recommend that you just go and hire a designer, because then basically you're having to pay them whether you're making money or not, and you're also having to pay them continuously, and come up with new designs, as opposed to being able to work at your own pace, which I think is important. But yeah, you can also find people on these sites who will do designs for you for one-off costs. Generally, it's more expensive than Fiverr. It's certainly more expensive than Auto Design, of course, but the designs tend to be better. They're just a bit more expensive. Moving on to more advanced designs, you can also hire professional designers. For example, there's a site called Rival Art, which does like custom sketches. So if, for example, you wanted to, let's say that you looked at the firefighter mom niche, and you wanted to do a design for firefighter moms, you might think that a good idea would be to do like a picture of a baby, with like a fireman's helmet. And that's something that I've actually seen on several different sites. So that might be something that you'd want to do. Custom sketches will generally cost about $50, and that's just for the actual sketch. They then also have to then fill it in with colours, and improve it, which can cost as much as a couple of $100, in fact. And then the final option, which is probably the worst, and aside from Auto Design, it's probably the quickest and the cheapest, it's the freest, is to do it yourself, either using MS Paint or GIMP, which is like a free version of Photoshop, like an image editing tool. Or of course you can use Photoshop, and I think Adobe have got a deal on at the moment, where it'll cost you like $10 to get a design done. So sorry, $10 a month to use Photoshop. And Photoshop is relatively easy to use, but it is, it's a very powerful software tool. So it's going to take you a while to get your head around Photoshop, and my personal opinion is that you shouldn't be doing designs yourself. Not when you can do them for free anyway with Auto Design, not when you can pay someone who understands Photoshop better than you $5 on Fiverr. I think the best way to approach this is to start cheap or free using Auto Design or Fiverr, and then get more expensive, more pro, invest more money after you've found a niche that's profitable, after you've had a successful design. At that point, you can then go back and hire a custom sketch artist, or hire a full-time designer, or do all these more advanced things. But initially, what we want to do is throw out lots of designs very cheaply using Fiverr, Auto Design, and then see what works, and then at that point we can go back and invest more in our designs. So what I'm going to talk about in this slide is how to write design briefs. So this is basically like you've got a design that you've got in your head. You know what it's going to say, you know roughly what it's going to look like. You want to now tell a designer, this is what I want, create me this design. You know, I've probably spent over $1 million, kind of in my previous life. I've kind of touched on this very briefly in some other videos. You know, I've been in business now for approaching a decade. I've had lots of people who I've hired, some of whom have been programmers, designers, copywriters, all kinds of people. I've hired people, on consistent wages, both over here in the UK, in the States, and also in other places where maybe the labour is a little bit cheaper. So, the Philippines or India or places like that. And I've written lots and lots of briefs, some of them for software, some of them for designs, some of them for various other things. And one of the maxims I've always held myself to is that it's better to have a good design. It's better to have a good brief and an average freelancer than it is to have an average brief and a good freelancer. So, in other words, you really need to be specific with your brief. So it's no good saying to someone, I want you to create a t-shirt that will target firefighter moms. I want something pretty. It should remind me of Paris in the summer, and be sure to reference cubism in some way, because the designer will be like, what on earth are you talking about? I have no idea what that is. And the result that you'll get back will be very, very poor. So if you ever hear people saying, I have trouble finding good designers, or my design is really bad, or things like that, well, it's because they don't understand the process and they don't know how to write briefs. And probably they're not being specific enough with their brief, because if you're specific with your brief, when you give it to the designer, if he doesn't do a good job, if he or she doesn't do a good job, they'll know as soon as they give it back to you, because you'll be able to say, well, I asked for it in white, I asked you to use this image, I asked for this font, I referenced this design here, and what you give me back isn't these things. And they'll know it, and they'll have to give you the best design, or refund you some or all of the money. And so we want to be specific. We want to give them examples of other designs that look similar to the one that you want. We want to give them icons and images that we want them to use, unless it's like really obvious stuff, like like a tick box, or a cross, or a smiley face, or stuff that they should really be able to find anywhere. Ideally, we want to actually physically give them the images, and so give them absolutely everything. And I normally add a line as well which says something like, but you can also go and do your own thing if you want, or feel free to change any of this if you think it would look better. So, allow them to have a bit of creative freedom, but at the same time, your brief should read so that it should be very specific as to what you want done. And the way to approach that, the way to think of what I mean by that, is a single phrase, which is, do it like this, but change that. So in other words, give them a reference to refer to, and that's basically what we were doing in the previous stage. We're building up this long list of designs that we like the look of. Maybe we like the entire design, maybe we like the style, maybe we like the image, maybe we liked certain elements of it. You want to reference that, but then tell them what you want them to change. It sounds harsh, but it's true. Assume your designer is an idiot. He almost certainly won't be. She almost certainly won't be. They're obviously very skilled, very intelligent people. But if you start from the basis that you're going to have to communicate every little micron of information that you want them to do, you're not going to be disappointed. Look at it this way: you are the hand, and he or she is the brush. Okay, so try and think of it in those terms, and you'll have a much more successful relationship with your designer. So again, give your designer any reference images. I normally buy images from Dreamstock. It can cost anywhere from sort of maybe $3 up to sort of $10 for an image. You can also get images from Google. Do be wary of copyright. If you're running searches, then good searches to run are like free image, free icon. So like free firefighter icon, free firefighter vector, things of that nature. I'll touch on that a bit more in the demo videos, but just be very wary of just going to Google Images and just pulling any old image, because it could well be copyrighted. As I've mentioned, our default position is we want to have white text and icons, and on a black t-shirt, or possibly 1 to 4 bright colours, 4 colours at most. And again, from a technical point of view, it needs to be 1000 by 1000 pixels, up to 3000 by 3000 pixel size in transparent PNG. And this is just a line that we just put in our brief. Anyone that designs t-shirts will know this anyway, but it's just always worth including that. So what I have here is, if you remember in the last video, I went through some of the a list of design ideas that I'd pulled up for the video game niche. And one of them was this one, which is a T-shirt which I found on Wanelo. Um, you can see that it's got like 452 people have saved it. So, I talked about metrics. That's an example of a good number of people who like this. And the t-shirt says single taken busy hunting dragons. The title is Skyrim video game. So this is like a video game. It's like a big multiplayer game. It's kind of like Warcraft, and it's a popular game. Now, in actual fact, as I've mentioned, I always try and be respectful of trademarks. I always try and be respectful of copyrights. And so what we can't really do is we can't just take this design exactly as it is and just, use this exact design. That being said, this is a design that appears in lots of different places. So this idea of single taken and then something else at the bottom, it's not trademarked, it's not copyrighted. Everyone's doing it. There are different variations of this on Teespring, on Pinterest. Single taken, busy hunting with my husband, single taken, busy surfing, single taken, so on and so forth. So the basic idea, the basic template we can use, we just can't take this exact layout. And so what I did was I looked at this and I thought, well, what can we put here that also brings us into the video game niche? And since this is Skyrim, which is kind of like a nerdy kind of multiplayer online video game, I wonder if we can do the same, but we can apply that to another nerdy kind of multiplayer online video game. And the one that I know of is the Warcraft niche, which is like the World of Warcraft. It's another multiplayer online game. And one of the things that you do within that niche is you level up, it's called. So leveling up is something where you basically get more powers, your character becomes more powerful, and you progress into the game. So my idea from looking at the Warcraft niche and knowing that that was one we wanted to look at was single taken, busy leveling up. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is how we can turn that into a brief that we can actually give to a designer. So you can see here, this was the list that we had before. I'm going to pick this particular one and I'm going to write a brief for it. And this is what your simple brief should look like. So, hello, I would like you to create a design like this link. So, really, if your brief doesn't start with that, then you didn't understand what I meant when I said we want to reference things, we want examples, we want templates. And really that is the most important part of the whole thing, because there's a lot that then we don't need to communicate, we don't need to tell him that this is the font, we don't need to tell him to use exactly a layout like that. A lot of those things are already within that statement. And not only that, but this design has been professionally created, we would presume, by a designer who knew that it was best to put single and taken in a bigger font, in bigger letters. A designer who knew that it was best to use tick boxes on the left instead of the right. A designer who knew lots of things and understood a lot of subtle things about design that we don't need to communicate and we don't need to understand, simply because we're just referencing what's already there. So, hello, I would like you to create a design like this. However, it should say single taken, currently leveling up. So instead of single taken, busy hunting dragons, in fact, I didn't even see that the first time. Let me change that to busy. Busy leveling up. Please use white text and put a white tick icon on the last line, put a white tick on the last line. The t-shirt will be black. Please provide the design as a transparent PNG file, 1000 by 1000 pixel size. I could also put as well, please make, well actually it's here, please use white text and put a white tick on the last line. All icons and text should be black. Should be white. The t-shirt will be black. Not that that really matters because they're just providing this transparent file, but just so they're aware. And then sometimes I'll also put, I have tried to be specific with this brief, but feel free to change anything if you think it would work better. So that pretty much is a very simple brief. You can see it took me under 2 minutes to create that. And we're going to get back there a design which basically does the job. So, hopefully you've seen what I meant when I started talking here about always trying to reference it back to a single design. You can hopefully see the value that we've got of having these, collecting these examples, these URLs of designs that have done well on other sites, and how easy it makes it for us to create these briefs. I see this time and time again, people going on complaining about having bad designs, people complaining about, not being able to convey the right thing to the designer. This is how you do it, and in particular, this is also how you do it. One final point though, do be respectful of copyright and intellectual property. You have to be careful that you don't just, take what works. I wouldn't normally even just copy everything and just change a couple of words like I've done here. But the reason I'm doing that is because if you put single take and t-shirt into Google, you'll see that there's like, 100 matches that come up. So this guy wasn't the first person that did the t-shirt. No one owns this basic idea. No one's enforcing this idea. No one's got a trademark on this. I've checked on Trademarkia. No one's owns this kind of basic layout. It's in the public domain. Everyone's doing it, and that's why I feel comfortable just making one tweak. If it was a design that was more unique, I'd be making more tweaks, but I'd still be providing a reference to my designer. While I'd probably just make more changes to ensure that what I ended up with was different to the original reference. But again, we want a reference. We want to go in there with a reference to give the designer. It just makes everything easier, and that's something that we've hopefully been able to do because you've got this big long list in the previous step. So hopefully this video was useful for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.